How many days should you rest between workouts?
Don't you want to look good naked?
So the amount of days to rest between your workouts is going to be primarily dependent on the type of workout you're doing, and more specifically, if we're talking about lifting, your training split. So for example, if you are doing an upper-lower training split, so you're training maybe 4 days a week and you have 2 upper sessions and 2 lower sessions, and this is typically what I do for my training, you typically want to make sure that you have at least 2 days between the upper sessions and 2 days between the lower sessions. So for example, if you were going to train upper body 1 on Monday and you trained lower body 1 on Tuesday, then I would say take Wednesday as a rest day and then jump back into upper body 2. So that gives you about 2 days or about 48 hours to recover between that upper body session, and then you can add lower body day 2 on Friday or Saturday, and that'll give you some time to recover between that lower body session. So that's just an example, but typically around 48 hours, maybe, what's 48 hours plus 24? 48, 36, whatever 3 days is, typically between 2 to 3 days is gonna be a good place to aim for, especially if you want to recover optimally. But again, this is also gonna depend on what type of workout you're doing and also what your intensity is within that workout. So how hard are you going during your training session? How many exercises are you doing for a specific muscle group? Again, all of these things are gonna be dependent on that. And then also just thinking about the overall recovery side of things. So we wanna make sure that when you're going into your next session, you are fully recovered. Let's say that you trained your glutes and your hamstrings on one of your first lower body days. So you had a lower body day and it was focused more so on posterior chain, so your glutes, hamstrings, and you have another session 2 days later and you have a few other exercises that maybe have some hamstring work as well. If you go into that session 2 days later and you're still feeling super sore in your hamstrings, which is pretty normal for a lot of people, especially if you're just getting into training, hamstrings can be one of those muscle groups that tends to take more time to recover from. So you want to just make sure that when you're going into that session, you are fully recovered, because if you are training and you're putting your muscles under more stimulus and more load and tension and they're not fully recovered, you might be actually doing a little bit more harm than good, in the sense of you're probably just gonna be doing more work and not getting as much reward as you think. So this kind of comes back to the concept of when you're in the gym training, you're actually breaking down your muscle tissue, right? You're breaking down your muscles, and then when you're recovering and you're resting, that's when they're building. That's when they're building up and recovering. So you need to make sure you have enough recovery between those sessions so that you can go into your next session feeling fresh, feeling good, able to create that stimulus that you want in order to build as much muscle as possible. Something else to think about is just how you're structuring your overall training, right? So I gave you the example of an upper-lower split, which is typically how I structure my training. But if you are just following random workouts or you're just doing random things throughout the week and you have no structure or no intent behind your programming, that can actually cause you to not recover optimally, because you might be working a lot of the same muscle groups on, a lot of the same days and not even realizing that you're overdoing that. So again, that's where proper structured programming comes into play and why it's important to make sure that you're following a structured program, one that has intention behind it, one that's been, planned out, and making sure that you're just not following some random workout on Instagram or TikTok. Because again, if you're not paying attention to that and you're maybe trying to build your glutes or your butt and you're doing all of these glute exercises, day in and day out, you might be doing a lot of work, but again, not getting the reward that you feel like you should out of that. So when it comes to soreness, it's not something that you necessarily want to chase during your training. So you shouldn't feel super, super sore after every single training session, like you can't walk up the stairs or you can't sit down on the couch. That probably means that you're overdoing it a little bit. Some soreness, especially if you are new to training, if you're new to lifting weights, if you're coming back from maybe a period of time off, it's normal for you to feel a little bit more sore as your muscles are adjusting to that stimulus, as your whole body's adjusting to that stimulus that you're bringing back in. So it's normal, in the beginning, or if you're coming back, to feel maybe more soreness than you normally would. So you shouldn't feel like you can't walk up the stairs or brush your hair every single day after your lifting sessions. You want to have some soreness, but if you're always feeling sore, again, you're probably overdoing it. So with that being said, making sure that you're recovering is important. So if you ever hear someone say DOMS or refer to DOMS, it just stands for delayed onset muscle soreness. So that is just another word for soreness after lifting. Your muscles need time to recover. And so that delayed onset muscle soreness is what's happening once you kind of put your muscles through that stimulus, through that stress, and they need to adapt. So typically between, again, 48 to 72 hours, I remembered what 3 days was, that's when DOMS is probably gonna, typically when that happens. And then past 72 hours, it should dissipate for most people. Women, we believe